In this lesson, we're going to take a look at the causes and effects of the War of 1812. To look at the causes of the war, we have to go back to when Thomas Jefferson was president a few years prior to 1812, and we see that Britain and France were fighting with each other again. Only this time, Britain was boarding American cargo ships and forcing or impressing U.S. sailors into service in the British Navy. This was because Britain had a shortage of sailors and was looking basically to use American sailors in their fight against France. Without a doubt, this was going to seriously anger the United States, but the United States was not in a strong position to do much to stop Great Britain from this. The solution that Thomas Jefferson came up with was to place an embargo on Great Britain. And what this meant, and you can see here the Embargo Act of 1807, when you place an embargo on something, you refuse to sell them goods. So the logic was Great Britain would stop impressing American sailors because they needed the goods that Americans were selling them. The problem with the Embargo Act was that Great Britain simply found other markets around the world to purchase the goods that it needed, and Americans were the ones that actually got hurt with this because they did not have other markets to sell their goods to. So you can see from this cartoon, American traders, American merchants were really very hurt by the Embargo Act of 1807, and Thomas Jefferson was very unpopular for doing this. Ultimately, in 1812, we are going to declare war against Great Britain for its continued action and for a couple of other reasons that we'll see in a moment. Keep in mind, James Madison was actually president at the time of the war. This list indicates there were several other issues besides impressment, although it was the impressment issue that was used to sell the war to the American people and make it a popular cause for going to war. Taking a look, though, we see number two, Britain was arming Indians on our frontier and attacking U.S. settlers moving west. They were doing so from Canada, so there was a movement in Congress and among some others to take Canada, all right, and solve the problem that way. And you can see here from item number 4, war hawks in the Senate favored war to push the British out of North America, which meant the U.S. taking control of Canada. This is a map that shows the military action in the War of 1812. The British are in red and the Americans are in blue. So you can see that there was a fair amount of action along the Canadian border and in the lakes. There was actually some naval battles on the Great Lakes here. The attempt to take Canada ultimately was a failure. The U.S. never did acquire Canada during this war, or since for that matter, not that we've tried. You can see here that the British blockaded the American coastline, which was going to prevent Americans from getting goods and possibly weapons from places outside of the United States. Notice that there were a lot of activity in the Potomac River, Chesapeake Bay, and Potomac River region. You'll see in a moment Washington, D.C. was invaded and taken, and the White House was burned. We'll get to that in a moment by the British. And you can see there was some activity in the South. Here's an artist's rendering of the British burning the White House. President Madison was actually just sitting down to dinner, and his guests, Madison and his guests, were forced to leave when word came that the British literally were just a short distance away. So when the British arrived at the White House, the soldiers walked in and saw the meal. They actually sat down and ate it prior to burning the White House. We can see here some other drawings from the war. Right, ultimately, the war is going to end in 1814 with the Treaty of Ghent, which is going to change nothing. All U.S. boundaries are going to remain the same. But the real issue behind the end of the war is simply that the British and French had stopped fighting, so Britain stopped impressing American sailors. There really was not much of a need to continue here. As a matter of fact, this drawing shows the Battle of New Orleans, which was actually fought after the war was over, but word hadn't reached soldiers from either side in New Orleans yet. Andrew Jackson became a national hero after this battle. So then, if America got nothing from the war, what changed? How did America gain if there was nothing to have been gained from the war? The short answer is we had managed to fight off, again, one of the world's great military powers, so morale was very high. That's part of the reason that this war is known as the Second American Revolution. We were finally going to gain some respect from Great Britain, holding them at bay as we did again. Additionally, the British blockade of the American coast meant that one of the things that we were unable to get was cloth, cotton cloth. So what's going to happen as a result of the war is the beginning of the cotton manufacturing industry is going to start in Massachusetts at this point in time. That's the essence of the War of 1812.